tough for me to write about because it would kind of be just black and white with the analyzation of it, but because I like to write more imaginatively. And 7 kind of takes the imagination factor out unless you're, hypothesizing a lot, but I don't know, it'd be tough to pick one.
Yeah, if you do 7, you can kind of take solace in that it's probably original work because the show's so new that a lot of people probably haven't written about it yet. So 7 has that going for it. As far number 5, I'd say you could probably also bring elements of number 6 into it as well, right? Because Catholics are probably seen as others, right? Especially with regards to Ireland, colonization of Ireland. Once you guys all know that history, right? That's a long and bloody history of England colonizing Ireland. All the religious strife that's came about because of it. Yeah, so there should be something here for everybody, whichever one you gravitate to most. So due date, Friday, November 12th. Friday, November 12th. So that's what? 2 weeks and that 2 weeks and a couple of days from now. So you have some time on this one to think it out and write it out and argue it and all that good stuff. And that'll be the week that we finish Haunting of Hill House as well. Next week, whenever we start talking about Haunting of Hill House, I'm also going to start introducing you guys to the big paper. Right, I'm going to introduce you to that starting next week, because we definitely got to start thinking about it at least. So most of the heavy work on that we'll do over the next couple of weeks as you guys come up with topics and things like that. I think I'm double checking the syllabus real quick, trying to remember how many short paper. I think I'm only asking you guys for 2 short papers. I double check myself. Yeah, 2 short papers. So this will be the last short paper you got to do. Okay. So questions, comments, concerns, anything at all before we move on to discussing Dracula? I'll post this up for you all tonight, so you guys will have access to it. Okay. Also, I'll post this up for you tonight when I post your grades. Okay.
Yeah, I've had a hard time with Dracula. I'll probably do one on Frankenstein.
Yeah, you see, I think I remember you saying last week, Jacob, you gravitated a little bit more to Frankenstein.
Yeah. I'm not really a sly guy like Dracula. I guess I'm more of a brute like Frankenstein's monsters.
Right.
I think that's what's gravitated me more towards Dracula is the suave and like the classiness of it. And Dracula, like you said, it's more about just that nitty gritty, creation aspect. Dracula's, both books are really, really sophisticated, but there's just a different tone set in both of them. I got much more of a nature feel out of, like, not nature in the sense of like nature versus nurture argument, more of like when I was reading it, I was envisioning the outdoors a lot more in it than I did in Dracula.
You would think that in Dracula we would get a lot of that, like the exotic mountains of Transylvania and things like that. But no, we definitely get lots more description of nature and stuff in Frankenstein with the Mont Blanc and
yeah,
all that.
I like the first scene there in the forest the best. Whenever he was looking at himself in the water, that was probably for me the best descriptive of the setting. I did like whenever he followed the monster to the top of the mountain to begin the chat. I enjoyed that one. And then it was a little more dark there towards the end of the story. I'll probably have to read over that one again. But for the most part, I didn't get a whole lot of setting tones there towards the end of the story.
Now you get the whole Arctic part at the end of the story, right? Because the 19th century is when they were exploring the Arctic regions for the first time. So you get that element of the setting at the end of Frankenstein too. Yeah, lots of those guys were those explorers who went out to the Arctic. They got stuck for years, right? During the summer, the ice might not fall enough for their boats to get out. Right? So can you imagine what that would have been like? Right? They made a pretty good horror show called The Terror that was about that. I would recommend that to you all. It was on AMC a couple of years ago. It's about those 19th century Arctic explorers, and they discover like some Lovecraftian type crap up there in the Arctic. Very good. Let's finish our discussion then of Dracula. So pretty straightforward what happens at the end of Dracula here, right? They chase Dracula down. Well, first we get Renfield's character arc finishes up. Right. Then we get that Dracula was using Renfield to get in on Mina. Right. So Dracula turns Mina into a vampire. Right? So we get the whole, it's not just a bite that causes a change into vampirism, right? It's a whole sort of weird act. And then, of course, we get the whole chase, right, where they chase him down. They hunt Dracula down. Right? They try to eliminate all of his coffins. Until they narrow it down to one. And then the chase back to Transylvania goes from there. So this is definitely the most action-packed part of the novel. Probably a lot more to discuss than even last week. Last week's kind of the middle of the novel. This week, everything finally comes full circle. So I'll just start out with some broad strokes here. What did you guys think about how Dracula concluded?
I don't know how to explain it, but it was as eventful and at the same time as uneventful as I imagined it to be. Because I expected some big grand ending, but at the same time, I knew that all along that they were going to have to, get him while he was asleep. That was going to be the end goal there. I saw a lot more of an important character dying at the end than Quincy. I thought Van Helsing was going to die for sure. So that's about all my take is on the ending. I like that it didn't leave the three sisters out, because definitely had to include them in there. If they would have left them out, then there would have been a massive hole in the story, because still got three that's just hanging around out there, which there could still be more. It'd be awesome if somebody would do a sequel.
The Bram Stoker's great grandson, I think, wrote a sequel that just came out a couple of years ago. Yeah, I bought it, but I haven't read it yet. So yeah, It's funny that they kill off the American at the end, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It took me back to last week when we were talking about how they were kind of making fun of the American here and there, and who dies. Yeah. Definitely could have been Dr. Seward. It wasn't like he was like, dire to the story or anything like that compared. I mean, I guess he was compared to Quincy Morris, but I imagined it was going to be Van Helsing or Parker. I didn't think that it was going to be Quincy or Dr. Seward or Mina. So didn't predict that at all.
Get a bit of a British superiority complex here at the end, right? The fact that they kill off Quincy. What do the rest of y'all think of the ending here, how it resolved, especially how it resolved all the book's themes that we've been discussing? You can take it, you guys can take us anywhere here.
Well,
I was thinking that it was definitely going to have like more of a climactic ending than what it had. It's kind of disappointing, where he said he was expecting something larger, but at the same time he knew that they had to get him while he was asleep. I was expecting something larger, but didn't really think about that, getting him while he was in his box.
So you wanted more of like a showdown type of deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like with the wolves and like just like more of a dramatic feel, I guess, or scene.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Tiffany. The novel does end it feels like it ends kind of abruptly. All we get, the biggest obstacle to getting to Dracula is getting through the Gypsies. Right? That's the biggest obstacle as far as getting to them. So the whole chasing him down thing was cool, but then, like you said, as far as the actual killing of him and stuff, it's not very movie like, right? Like it would make a good movie to have more of a showdown. Yeah, so we'll definitely talk the last passage of the book today. I think it's important. About some of the rest of y'all, Jacob, was you going to say something a minute ago?
I think I've got about an hour left in my book, and I'm just about at the part where they've closed off most of his houses there in London, and they're waiting in the third one, and he comes in and he jumps back real quick. I'm just past there. I'm just having a super hard time following. I like listening to it, and it flows really nice, and it's kind of got an elegance to it that I enjoy. But for the most part, I can't retain it. I really have no concept of what the storyline is. It's all over the place. I'll listen to it for probably 2 or 3 hours at a time, and I'm just having a hard time getting anything to connect.
Is it just the narration style, the epistolary style that you think's making you have a hard time with?
I don't know. It just doesn't seem to captivate me enough. I don't pay attention as much as I should to it. My mind tends to wander whenever I'm listening to it. It wasn't like anything. It wasn't like Frankenstein. Frankenstein, I was right there with it. But with this, because I ordered paper copies to read along, and the damn Dracula book is just so big that there's no way I could possibly tote it around. So I was just listening to it, and I just can't follow it. I'm going to have to read it again.
I guess that's why we spent 3 weeks on the thing, because it is definitely our longest one.
Yeah, it was 14 and a half hours long, I think, Colton.
I listened to the last 3 chapters in 1.8 speed, and it was a wild ride trying to decipher the British accents. And I rewound it. There's a couple times I rewound and was like, well, I'm just kind of taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back here because I'm going so fast and then clicking back and like, what do you say? What do you say? So I eventually slowed it down to like 1.4, 1.5 and managed it that way. But I think probably a reason that would be hard to read is the amount of characters that you got to keep up with that matter to the story. You know, you got a lot of books where it's like you have 2, 3 characters that really, really matter to the story, and then you have side characters here and there. You really got 2, 3. I think, up until about midway through, until Lucy dies, I think you have about 6 characters that are very, very important to the storyline.
Or 7, maybe probably more than that. There's the crazy guy, the 2 women. There's Dracula and his wives.
I completely forgot about Dracula counting those. I would say, people that you have to absolutely keep track of in the story are Dracula, Van Helsing, Jonathan, Mina, Lucy, Dr. Seward, Rimfield, and that I think 7's a good number for you. You absolutely have to know what's going on with them.
Arthur too, I would add.
Arthur, yeah. And I said Lucy, right? So I mean, you've really got 8 that you definitely have to know what's going on with them, and then by midway through the book, you're at 7, and then really up until the last quarter of the book, you're at 6, still having to know what 6 people are doing at every moment. I did like how in the end on the campaign going after him, they basically split everything into 2s. You had, was it Van Helsing and Mina?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't remember how the guys split up. 2 of them were on horseback, and then 2 went by boat, right? Who was on the boat? Was it?
I think it was Jonathan who was on horseback. Might be wrong.
Yeah. I think you're right. I thought that it was Jonathan and Quincy on horseback. I thought. Yeah. And then Dr. Seward and Arthur on the boat. So I like that because it kind of made it easier to, because like, if Jonathan's with Quincy, you don't really have to keep up with what's going on with Quincy because he's there. He was like the one that was kind of the outcast of all of them. And then if Dr. Seward with Arthur, you don't really have to keep up with what's going on with him. And then you got Van Helsing and Mina together. It's like they have their own little stories, and there wasn't 3, 1, and 1. Like that's when it would get a little bit confusing for me, is like when you would have a group of 3 go off, and then you'd have Arthur out doing this, and then you have Mina back at the asylum, and that's when it was a little bit confusing. But other than that, I think it's probably my top 3 favorite books that I've read. Honestly, I really, really did enjoy it. But I probably do want to read it again sooner or later, just to.
Yeah, I can't. I can't give it a letter grade right now. I like it, but I have no idea what's going on. There's a couple glimpses. I really enjoy when the guy really comes back to, the lunatic. I like the lunatics. But he comes back to and he's talking with the girl. I think it was Lucy or something. It was old dude's wife. I forget what her last name is. But he came back too, and he was just talking to her like it was any normal day. And at the end of it, she said, it was nice to meet you. Hope to see you again. He says, I hope we don't. Like, yeah, I know I'm crazy. I'll probably not my right mind next time. Just that he was aware of it at that point in time before he broke his back was cool.
So can we talk about how he died?
Renfield.
Yeah. Was I'm assuming it was out of just pure anger and disgust from Dracula, right? Like that's the only reason, because he kind of defied him.
Well, they couldn't really explain it, could they?
Well, no,
any conclusions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody in the know was knowing what was going on, what happened to him. After they figured out that, he was in there. But and yeah, they did the operation was what they were calling it on him and got him to fess up. But I completely had forgotten that he had got to the point to where he was like, please let me leave. I want to leave. I want to leave. And I guess that's probably what angered Dracula, was because he was kind of fed up with the whole, this guy's going to make me a king and he hasn't done anything for me. And so he was like, screw it, I'm done. So I guess that's why Dracula just came in and mollywopped him.
Yeah, Renfield grabs Dracula in the while he's in the mist. Right? I think he says like he tries to use his insane person energy.
Yeah, he says that he's got a ton of energy because he's psychotic, he's a lunatic. And what's funny is that he's a lunatic and he knows he's a lunatic, and then he uses that to his advantage. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they wrestle in the fog, and I was actually reading in my version. They say that's a reference to, I think from the Bible, Jacob wrestles with God in Genesis. I mean, it's kind of, he was kind of referencing that. He talks about how he was wrestling Dracula in the mist, but then Dracula pretty much smashes his skull. Right. The surgery they do is to relieve the pressure in the brain from the brain injury. So
yeah, blood clot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that part. That was probably one of my favorite parts of the novel, was whenever it started speeding. Probably my favorite parts of the novel was from that point up until they encountered him. Was my favorite part. So I like that, and then I like the ship. The part about the ship too. Those are my biggest points that got me excited in the novel. But I guess like on that map of how a storyline goes, what would you consider the climax in the story?
Probably the end, right? When they finally face off at the end. Like we talked about how it seemed anticlimactic in a way, but like that seems to be the final moment. It all comes to a head. Or you can maybe make the argument when he bites Mina, right? Then you're kind of going the gradual downslope from there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that in a novel like that big, with that many twists and turns, I think you could just about pick a group of 10 people and have 3 or 4 different opinions on what the most climactic part of the novel was. For me, I think and it might not make sense to anybody else, but I think it was when they encountered him in Piccadilly. I thought that was very climactic because they saw him. They were faced with, like, I mean, I know they've seen him before. That was the one time, I guess, that they were all together there, prepared for him, and he addressed them all at once, and then that's when the chase started. And I think that was kind of where I took everything calmed down. I was ready for the end, so I think that's why the end wasn't really a big, climax in the story for me, because I was prepared for it.
I think the most climactic part was when he bites Mina, because they use Mina's connection to him to eventually track him down.
Yeah, that's definitely something we're going to talk about today. Is that psychic connection that she supposedly has to him. Yeah. As far as like the gradual downslope, right? I can see all your points there, Colton. I was going to say this. Like, for a book called Dracula, we get a surprising lack of Dracula, right? I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but other than the first 50 pages of the book, right, we really don't get a lot from the Count himself here, right? Just a couple of glimpses of him in the later half. That's pretty much it, right? So I don't know. You guys think having more of Dracula in the book would have made it Or do you agree with is the absence of him an effect in and of itself? Yes,
I noticed that. And I also noticed that there was more focus on Lucy than there was actually what the Count Dracula had done throughout the whole story. And I thought it was kind of weird because, you know, when you're going into it, you expect to see nothing but Dracula and his work. But instead you saw Lucy and the doctor, or the professor. Yeah, and everything that Lucy did, they try to undo.
I feel like if they more of Dracula, I feel like if there's any more like of Dracula in the story, it would kind of take away from like the mystique of him, like the kind of the unknown about Dracula. I feel like having more of him in there would take that away.
I agree. I think the story is more about friendship than it was about Dracula. Like you had this group of 5, or 7, 8, very different people that were all kind of friends in the beginning, and then this one common enemy tied them all closer together than anybody could ever be tied together. So I think that if you had more Dracula, it would take more of that. They probably could have leveled it out a little bit better. I think that it would have been more fun to see Dracula more in the novel, but it definitely would have took away from the friendship aspect and the struggles that they all had to endure just from his seldom appearances. I think that spoke to how powerful he was over them, because he was rarely seen and did a few things throughout the novel that plagued him for, I guess were they coming up on a year, or was it a year and a half? I can't, the timeline messes with me. So it started in, was it April?
Mm-hmm.
And then it ended November the 4th, 5th, something like that. So, he did a few things and it bothered him for like a straight, what was that, May, June, July, August, 7 months. So
Yeah, I can definitely agree with the whole friendship type thing. I think if there had been more of Dracula in the story, it would have took away from him being like he was still the antagonist, but I think the overall effect of it would have been less. We would have known more of his story rather than theirs.
Right.
yeah, because they had a lot to do and a lot to cover. I think that's the thing with the miniseries and with all the with the idea of making a movie about it, is there's so much that goes on that it would be tough to pack everything that they did into one movie. So that's kind of why I like the miniseries a lot. Was it took elements of all their tiny little stories and drag them all together. But if you made, I think you could make two. I think you could make a movie out of it. You'd have to split it into a 2-part series. You'd have to have a first one, then a sequel. I think you could stop where they free Lucy's soul, and then you could pick it back up from there again and make the sequel.
I kind of want to see like just an original story than like a prequel, like what made Dracula in the first place.
They made a movie about that. I think it's called Dracula Untold, I think was the name of it. It wasn't very good though. I remember it kind of sucked. That was part of Universal trying to reboot the monster universe. The Tom Cruise Mummy ended that. Right? That the Tom Cruise Mummy was a bomb.
I heard the other day they're going to go after that again.
Are they?
Yeah, my brother-in-law was telling me, because he's really into a lot of that stuff, and he said that they had acquired all of the rights to just about everything they needed to try to make it as successful as what the DC universe is. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be, because it's gothic fiction versus a comic book, but he said they were going to try to boot it back up, and that I think he said that their start was going to be with Frankenstein, and then they were going to try to fix what they did with Dracula,
But I didn't know that was the same story was what the Dracula Untold. I didn't know that Universal did that, and that was a part of the dark universe that they were trying to do. But I think a lot of production companies do that. They have this idea of starting out a universe and trying to tie everything together, and then something bombs, and they're like, "What did we do wrong?" And they go back and try to fix it later on.
So then, who's stronger, Frankenstein or Dracula? Who you got?
What movie would be better, or who's kicking whose ass?
Who's the stronger? Who's kicking whose ass?
God, that's a tough one. I think Dracula beats, unless Frankenstein was really smart, so he may have somehow acquired the knowledge on how to defeat Dracula. But if he didn't have Van Helsing's knowledge of how to defeat him, I think Dracula's beating him down. But if he had the knowledge of how to stop him, Frankenstein's probably a pretty good asset to have on your team. Like he's dead. He's undead as well. I mean, could Dracula even do anything to him besides try to snap his neck? But he was so powerful, I'd say strength is probably matched there.
Should I add this as an essay topic? Who would kick whose ass and why?
That'd be a dope essay topic.
I think I should. I'd have to go with Dracula on that one, I think. He's got the strength of 20 men. I don't know if the monster has that. I don't know if he has that much brute strength. Summoning wolves and all that's pretty helpful too.
I'm going Dracula for sure.
Right, so we kind of went off on a bunch of different angles right there. I want to go back to Irene's point that she raised earlier about how the novel seems predominantly centered around the women, right? Both Lucy and Mina, right? The women as victims in the novel. I think she's pointing us in an interesting direction right there. Like, what do you guys think about? Well, this is something we got to talk about a little today, right? Last week we talked about Lucy, right, and how Lucy seems to be punished in the novel, right, because she's a little loose, right? That's something that we talked about last week. It's definitely painted that way in the miniseries, but here we have Mina throughout the whole thing is painted as this virtuous. I mean, she's a lady of extreme virtue, right? Van Helsing says she has a man's brain and a woman's body. Right? So she's a man's brain and the heart of a woman. That's how Van Helsing describes her. And we have this whole corruption thing going on, right? But they even say at one point that Mina couldn't get into heaven, right, because of what Dracula had done to her, this unholy type of marriage. And last week too, we talked about how the blood marriage theme, right? Well, Dracula here, that's what he does to Mina, right? He opens up his veins and makes her drink his blood, right? That's what turns her into a vampire. So there's lots of weird stuff going on there with Mina. What did you guys make of all of that, especially from a feminist point of view? Do you guys think that I don't know, what do you guys think? Mina's a victim here, right? What do y'all think of this, saying that she couldn't? I mean, Dracula pretty much rapes her, right? And this is very much an act. This is not a consensual act. So they're even saying in the book here she can't go to heaven, right, because of what Dracula did to her, right? See, that seems kind of messed up, does it not?
I think it runs along the same lines of in the miniseries whenever Sister Agatha talks about suicide. Remember when she's on the ship and she's like, "Oh, I guess we have one last talk about the mortal sin of suicide," because she's getting ready to blow up the ship. I think it runs along the same lines. They had a bad idea of what was considered, I guess, unclean back then, and I don't know if it was because if a woman would have if Dracula had been a woman, would it have been looked at in the same sense? Like, would they have been saying the stuff about, oh, she can't get into heaven because of this, or would they have been like, yeah, this crazy ass woman sucked her blood, now she's dead? Would they have made it that big of a deal if she was a woman, or if Dracula was a woman, not her? But I think it's a bad time for understanding justice as far as what's right and what's wrong.
I saw you unmute a minute ago, Ethan. Was you going to say something about this?
I was going to talk about the miniseries after he brought it up. I watched the first episode. I thought it was pretty. So it was like the Van Helsing? Was that his daughter? Was that some relative of him, or was they portraying Van Helsing as a girl?
Yeah, she's just made up, right? She's just like an embodiment of his character and Sister Agatha in the story.
Yeah,
You'll notice that
the miniseries pretty much makes Van Helsing a woman, right?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
It's a common theme in that miniseries that you'll notice that little elements of the book get drug into the miniseries that you're like, okay, I can see why they put this in here. I can see why they put this in here. And they don't really match up to the story in the book at all, but pieces of the original story are definitely in there. Like how I don't want to spoil the second one. The second one's awesome. I remember you said that last week, and watched a little bit of the third, and I was shell shocked at the beginning of the third one. Blew my mind. I was so excited with that twist. It's like, wow, this is awesome. This is gonna be great. I still haven't watched the third one yet, but I'm super excited to watch it tonight.
I just watched the first one, but I liked it. I was trying to figure out why. So like they portrayed Dracula as like an old, like he looked really like old and feeble, like at first. So how did he like just his appearance just completely changed? How did that happen?
Do you remember in the novel when he kept telling, when he would, at nighttime he would go out and feed, I guess, right? Did it explicitly say that in the novel?
Yeah, I remember when Harker sees Dracula in London, Dracula's younger again, right? Because he had feasted on that much blood.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same concept in it don't really in the miniseries. It doesn't show him going out during the night and feeding on people. That's the impression that it gives us that he's out. I get, and that's one of the elements. I guess you kind of almost had to read the novel to understand why he was aging backwards, because it does. I don't think it says it or shows it anywhere in the miniseries. Even in the next episode, it doesn't really say that. Unless Sister Agatha says it at some point. Van Helsing, I don't remember if she does or not, but I liked her character a lot too. Cool.
What do you guys think of, since we're on the subject of the miniseries, what do you guys think of that his performance as Dracula? I think he nailed it. He was a really good Dracula, I thought.
I told you I hadn't watched a scary movie in 13 years, and I was dead serious. And I made it as far as whenever he's crawling out of the wolf's body. And I was like, okay, I can't do this. And then I couldn't go to sleep the rest of the night. Because I'm at home by myself, like at nighttime, because my husband and I work opposite shifts. So yeah, I'm pretty sensitive to stuff like that. But I think it's only along the lines of like the whole evil, like good versus evil type. You know, it had like the crucifix, and it was basically like demonic. So now, if it was probably something like Frankenstein, and it was just a mad scientist that had created something, it wouldn't have probably bothered me. But the whole demonic realm of things, yeah, I'm a firm believer in stuff like that. So yeah, it kind of messed with me a little bit.
You think it was the bloody wolf that? You think it was just the gore that? Got you?
Well, not really so much the gore as much as like, all the sisters were all lined up there. And so it was kind of like Satan versus God, in the sense of how I was taking it in. And I guess that's what kind of was triggering for me.
Right.
I thought he nailed the performance too. I was gonna say that. Like I after it was after that point that she stopped watching it was when I was like, okay, I like this guy a lot. And then in the second one, when they go on the ship, I was like, this guy's so cool. Like I hate that he's the bad guy because it's one of those bad guys that you just love. And you also got some of the good guys in there, some of the crew. I was like, okay, I like this guy. The dude, his guy that said he was Dracula was his silent partner. The guy, I want to punch that guy in the face so bad, and I was so happy with how that situation went. So if you guys get around to watching that part of it, it's awesome.
Yeah, to sum up the miniseries, right? Part 1 is all about Jonathan at Dracula's castle, and then the standoff with the nuns at the end. Right, we learned that Van Helsing's a nun in the show. Part 2's Dracula on the boat going to England. They made, instead of like this merchant boat, they made it more of like a passenger boat in the show. So there's a whole episode of him on the boat. Part 3, Dracula gets stuck below the ocean for 100 years. And so part 3 is about Dracula living right now, right, in London. So
I love the part whenever it was figured out that he was I can't remember the name, but his alias, something started with a B. But whenever he kind of come out and said, "Oh yeah, well, you married her and got her money, and now I'm your silent partner. So thanks for all you've done for me." And then he's like, "So now I get your money." And it just showed how sly he was, I guess. And then same thing on the beach. Whenever he grabs the video camera, and he's like, "Oh," she's like, "You even know what that is?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a camera." And she's like, "How'd you even know that?" And he's like, "I've been around for centuries. Things change, but you start to notice them." Then he goes in and starts talking to that woman. He's like, "Yeah, your husband Mike beating you."
right.
She's like, "How do you know that?" And he's like, "I think I've done what you guys might call downloading some of his memories." And I turned it off at about that point. When he sat down and started watching the sun, I thought that was awesome too, because he can't look at the sun. He talked about in the first episode, he was asking Jonathan to describe how beautiful it was, and then he gets to watch it on TV, and I was kind of so happy for him. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." But I like the bad guy in this series. Not a whole lot of series I like the bad guys in.
It made it for me when he cut the nun's head off and he said she's clearing her throat. That was hilarious.
Yeah, he's a good villain. It's like he brings that calm presence into it, the calm presence that Dracula has, and then he's got the one trigger, which is blood and the holy signs. And even with the holy signs in the miniseries, I like how he doesn't like start freaking out or burning or anything like that. He just he's like, whoa, and doesn't, kind of hides it like he's Like there's somebody naked standing in front of him.
Yeah, they did something interesting there with like the holy signs, right? It wasn't the holy sign itself that scared Dracula. It was Dracula couldn't stand the corruption that was in the church and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he told Sister Agatha that after consuming so many different souls throughout the years, that he had inherited that fear of the cross. You know, and it's kind of like he's got that same fear of it that everybody else does, where it's like, oh no, I shouldn't do bad things, but he's so evil that it doesn't matter, and that's why it disgusts him. But I think it's great. I think it's a great miniseries.
Yeah, the last episode, if you haven't watched it, Colton, I just rewatched it earlier today. It's interesting when they put the last half of the novel in the modern setting.
Gotcha.
There's lots of the exotic themes in the second episode too, right? Like
the Romanians, and you got everybody. You got the lady with the German accent, and he goes out and feeds on the guy just so his German will get better, and he can come back and have a conversation with her. I like that too. I also liked in the third one how he looked up at the helicopter and he said, "I really like the flying thing. You guys been working hard." Because he goes to sleep when there's not even the only source of transportation's a horse, a train, or a boat. And then he comes up out of the water and there's this giant hunk of metal flying around over top of him, and he's not even shocked by it. He's just like, "Wow, that's awesome." Most people would be freaking out.
I like how he thought the woman who lived in like the double wide, how he thought she was like living in luxury. Right? I thought that was pretty funny. He was like, "There's not an emperor in history who wouldn't want all the stuff you got in here." Right? The TV and the refrigerator and all that.
Yeah, he said something along the line. She's like, "Where's my husband at?" And he was like, "He's in the." Or she's like, "What have you done with my fridge?" And he's like, "Oh, is that what you call it?" And she's like, "Where's my husband?" He's like, "He's in the fridge." He said, "Took some folding, but got him in there." Definitely a lot more humorous than the novel. But I imagine the miniseries, the Dracula portrayed in the miniseries, is what Dracula would have been in the novel had we seen more of it. I feel like you would have got a lot more of that calm, sly, the tiny things he says. It's not funny, but it's funny because it's that he knows things that everybody else doesn't.
Any of the rest of y'all get anywhere in the mini series? Tiffany got to the first episode. Ethan was episode in.
That's where I was. I had watched the first episode and hadn't got to watch any more.
The second episode is my favorite of the lot. I think the second episode's pretty clever stuff. It does a lot, like as we said, with colonial themes and even like gender and sexuality themes. Like the one guy who marries the I think she's like a princess or something, right? Like he's that's a gay character in the show. I thought that was pretty cool. That's why he wants to serve Dracula or whatever. So it puts lots of interesting modern spins on stuff.
I personally didn't get to watch the miniseries because where I work nights, I come home, sleep, and then between my other classes, I didn't get time to. But I plan on watching it whenever I do get time.
Well, it'll be a nice little Halloween binge for you if you want something fun to watch. You guys all got to break your scary movie thing for Halloween this year, Tiffany? You gotta break out of it this year.
I think it's great for Halloween because it's like Tiffany, you got to watch more of it because it's not like I get that you're the whole good versus evil thing, but it's really, I think it gets more humorous in the second episode. And once you kind of get to know the characters and stuff, it's easier to watch. I don't think the second episode's as tense as the first one when they're having that big standoff. I think that was probably the most tense part that I've watched so far. But it's great because it's not one of those horror movies where it's like you're waiting on a jump scare every 10 seconds. It's actually, I don't know how to explain it. It's so much like a murder mystery. The second episode, it's like have you guys watched the dumb Adam Sandler movie about the murder mystery on the boat? It's so much like that, but darker, and the visuals are better, and it's really good.
I'll have to try it again in the daylight, I guess.
I tried this play. I thought my daughter was going to go and play, and as soon as I turned it on, as soon as Dracula had went young again, no, here she came running. I was like, yeah, I can't watch that with her. So I'm going to try tonight if they go to bed.
Yeah, like I've watched pretty much all of these things over the years. Like I've always really liked the character and stuff. I think the miniseries is one of the best ones to date. I still really like the '92 movie as well with Gary Oldman as Dracula, and Keanu Reeves plays Harker. Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. That's a Winona Ryder as Mina. That's a good one too. They try to make it into a love story though. Like it's pretty much the exact same as the book, but they try to make Dracula and Mina into like this lost love reincarnation story. It sounds kind of stupid when I say it, but the movie actually kind of pulled it off. So, if you guys want a good one, I would recommend the '92 version. The same guy who directed The Godfather directed it. So, yeah, that one's well done. It's aptly called Bram Stoker's Dracula. So if you want to watch that version, that's a good adaptation. Right. Yeah. Colton just talked about the miniseries making Van Helsing a woman. Right. There's a sort of tension between them. Right. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the third episode with that, Colton. So.
I'm a binge watch kind of guy. I haven't got to turn it on yet, but when I do, I'll watch 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, it's 3 episodes. I think each episode is an hour and a half. So it's a pretty good, it's something you can, I remember when it first came on, I sat down and watched it all in an afternoon. Yeah, I don't know why they just didn't make it 6 episodes either. It's the same people that made the Sherlock show. And that's what the Sherlock show does too. They make it.
I'm going to have to go. I've lost my kid in an abandoned school, and I don't know where she's at. I think she's on the 2nd floor.
Well, hopefully you find her, Irene. That sounds like a horror film premise.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm freaking out. Okay, I'm gonna log off.
Hopefully she finds her. All right.
That's no good. No bueno.
I lost my wife today. Couldn't find her for like an hour and a half. She came back from clinicals in Charleston and messaged me when she got to about Madison. And then an hour and a half goes by and I don't hear from her. And she normally texts me when she gets to Walmart in Logan, which is a 15-minute trip. Once, where the last place she texted me was. I freaked out for like an hour and a half. Turned out her and the person she was carpooling with, the car broke down about 5 minutes from where I work, and they didn't have cell service. So I freaked out all day over that. Thought she got kidnapped or something.
It's always bad when you have those moments where you lose contact for whatever reason.
Cell phones have spoiled us. We don't have any patience anymore.
Yeah, and in the third episode of the show, Dracula gets on Tinder.
That's gonna be great.
That's kind of funny. So
Nice.
that's how he meets Lucy.
Okay. Nice. So she even gets painted as somebody that's out there trying to get it in the miniseries. Well, Lucy can't catch a break no matter what.
She can't. Dr. Seward's like in love with her. And she's kind of leading them on and all that stuff in the show. Which class did I have her for, Colton? I remember you said I'd had her before. Do you know which class it was she took with me?
Dr. Yeager for. I think it was American Lit in the summer class.
Oh yeah. This past summer,
yeah. I was telling him how I lost you today.
Yeah, that was a good class too. That was a very good summer group we had.
Hello, Dr. Yeager.
Hello. Yeah, we should let's wrap things back up around with the novel again. I'll definitely be interested to see if you guys want to do a paper about the miniseries. Even if you want to do a different adaptation of Dracula besides the miniseries for that question, feel free. So if you want to do the Bram Stoker's Dracula film, or maybe you even want to do like the film from the 1930s with Bela Lugosi, you can do that one too. That's a classic.
Is that one silent?
No. That Bela Lugosi's got the famous accent in it. He's like, "I am Dracula." That's how he sounds in it. That one would probably be a good one for you to watch, Tiffany, because I mean there's not a blood and gore. It's pretty PG.
I was gonna say I need like a G rated.
For the 30s, it was shocking stuff, but there's the one that's silence from the 20s. That one's called Nosferatu. That one's the creepiest one of all of them, I think. Colton just said you're going to do your paper on Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah, there we go.
I remember Jacob said he was a fan of Hotel Transylvania as well.
Oh yeah, I think they're coming out with a fourth one.
I haven't watched any of those. I need to.
The first one's really good. The second one's it's okay. And then the third one's got Dr. Van Helsing in it. So that's cool. I don't know what to expect for the fourth.
To get back around to the novel again, before we started talking about the show, we mentioned Mina and how like this whole it is definitely unsettling, right? But Dracula pretty much violates her against her will, and she's seen as not being clean in God's eyes and things like that. I think that's a that's definitely not a progressive part of the novel for sure. Like she loses this virtuous Victorian lady thing, right? And she becomes something monstrous after that. That's Victorian era for you, though. Like any type of thing that would corrupt like that, right, is taboo. So even though it was against her will, even though she didn't consent to it, she's still blamed for it. It's kind of like the modern, whenever we talk about stuff like this today, it's kind of like the modern thing, like, oh, she was asking for it or something like that. That type of sensibility came about in the Victorian age. So it's very much the same type of thing going on here with victim blaming Mina for what she did. Right. Don't wear shorts that short if you don't want that kind of attention. Right? That's the same kind of logic. That's very Victorian logic. So, now, if you're interested in doing the gender and sexuality question, right, that's something that you'll definitely want to take up. Like, compared to Lucy, Nina is painted very virtuously, right? But nonetheless, right, if this whole thing wouldn't have wrapped up the way that it did, she would have ended up in dire straits herself. So
I would take the assumption that everybody was starting to fall in love with her too, because as virtuous as she was being painted, and then she was like the only woman they hung out with for 6 months straight. You know, I would think that everybody was probably developing a crush on her too.
Yeah, she kissed Quincy at one point and like hugged Arthur to comfort him and all this stuff. So
yep.
She even says at one point, she's like, I hope Arthur doesn't think this is too forward, right? But I'm trying to comfort him for losing Lucy.
Yeah, I think that they managed to escape making her look like Lucy by painting her as like a motherly figure to them all. If she didn't have that motherly essence and that, you know, like she was taking care of everybody and always uplifting everybody's spirits, if she would have been as innocent and defenseless, because they kind of painted Lucy as, you know, she was painted as everyone has to help her, whereas Mina was kind of headstrong and went off on her own way and figured things out on her own and had a little bit more intuition. I think that protected her from being looked at in the same sense that Lucy was.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the book, this question goes unraised. And that's, how did Dracula get the invitation to get into Lucy's house? And I don't know if you guys wondered about that, but we know how he gets into Dr. Seward's asylum through Rimfield. But the question's unanswered in the book. How does he get access to Lucy's house, right? So that kind of further maybe incriminates Lucy a little bit, because it leaves that up for suggestion that she invited him in. Maybe not, though. Maybe it was like one of the servers, like one of the servants or something, invited him in. Right? He leaves that question unanswered, even though he raises the question in the book.
Well, if he's the same Dracula that he is in the miniseries, then he's a very seductive person. It's just like when him and can't remember what her name was, but they were out on the front of the ship together. She's like, I don't know if I should be sitting here conversing intimate matters with such a handsome man. And it took like 3 sentences, and she was just ready to sit there and talk to him all night. So I would think that as smart as he was and as cunning as he was probably a ladies' man. So I think that's a good theory.
Yeah, here all we see him is when he's feeding or something, right? So he's like snarling at him or something like that. So Stoker leaves that up to her imagination as well, right? Like, what's he like when he's not fulfilling his animalistic instincts? So if we take a quick look at the end of the book,